Sir, do you understand why I pulled you over?
Officer, I believe I was driving within the speed limit.
Sir, do you know why I pulled you over?
Officer, I do not.
Rain hammered against the windshield as Judge Marcus Hill adjusted the rearview mirror, catching his son's sleepy reflection in the back seat. The 12-year-old clutched a spelling bee trophy, proud and exhausted. They'd stayed late celebrating. Blue lights flared behind them. Marcus frowned. He'd been driving 5 miles under the limit. He eased the car to the shoulder. 2 officers emerged, flashlights slicing through rain, hands already on holsters. "Evening, officers," Marcus began, voice calm, measured, license and registration. The younger cop's tone was flat, rehearsed. The older one scanned the car's interior like it was a crime scene. Marcus reached slowly for his wallet. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The younger barked. His son flinched. Marcus froze, both hands in midair. The beam of light caught the gold ring on his finger, the one engraved Justice Hill, glinting for just a second before the older cop leaned in closer. "What's your business out here, sir?" "Heading home from my son's school event." "Your son, huh?" the officer muttered. Gaze lingering too long. Marcus's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He'd presided over cases like this. Men humiliated on camera, explanations drowned out by commands. The boy whispered, "Dad, are we in trouble?" Marcus's throat tightened. "No, son. Just..." The metallic click of a gun safety cut him off. "Step out of the vehicle now." Rain roared harder. The trophy tipped and fell, rolling under the seat. Gold against the dark floor just as the officer's hand disappeared from view. Marcus opened the door. The cold night swallowed his breath, a flash, a shout, a scream, and then silence. Rain blurred the highway into ribbons of light. Marcus Hill's wipers dragged back and forth, smearing more than they cleared. His son Elijah slept against the window, trophy hugged to his chest. For once, life felt normal, quiet, ordinary, until the siren screamed. Marcus glanced at the rearview mirror, blue and red slicing through the storm. He slowed, signaling, pulling to the side. His law-trained mind immediately began sorting facts. Speed limit, 45, no violation. Lights functional. No probable cause. Still, the lights didn't fade. He rolled down the window, rain spattering his sleeve. 2 silhouettes approached, flashlights in hand. "Evening, officers," he said, voice controlled. The younger one, nameplate gleaming Reed, shone the light straight into Marcus's eyes. "License and registration." Marcus handed them over. "May I ask what the issue is?" Reed smirked. "We'll get to that. Keep your hands visible." The older cop circled toward Elijah's side. "Who's in the back?" "My son." The beam landed on Elijah's face. The boy stirred, confused. "Keep still, son," Marcus said softly. Reed's tone sharpened. "You nervous, sir?" Marcus inhaled through his nose. "I'm calm." You people usually get defensive quick." The phrase sliced through the car like a crack of thunder. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Excuse me." Reed shrugged. "Just making conversation." Marcus studied the rain hitting the dash and counted the seconds. "Stay composed. Don't give them an excuse." Elijah's small voice came from the back. "Dad, what's happening?" "It's okay," Marcus whispered. "We're okay." Reed tapped the door. "Step out, sir. I don't understand." "Did I break a law?" "Step out now." Marcus sighed, unbuckling. The cold air slapped his face as he exited. He stood tall despite the drizzle soaking through his suit. Reed eyed him. "You been drinking?" "No. Where you coming from?" "My son's school event." "School event at 10 p.m.? Sounds suspicious." Marcus felt the humiliation rising like bile. He pulled out his ID, the black leather case with the golden seal of the Superior Court of Georgia. "I'm Judge Marcus Hill." For a moment, silence. Then Reed chuckled. "Sure you are." The older officer, Badge Holloway, joined him, grin spreading. "You judges sure downgrade your rides." Marcus's jaw clenched. "You can call dispatch to confirm." "Hands behind your back." Elijah gasped from inside the car. "Dad, stay inside," Marcus called, heart pounding. Reed's voice turned cold. "We'll handle this." Metal cuffs bit into his wrists. The pavement was slick, unforgiving. He fell to his knees, the mud soaking through his trousers. "Officer, this is unlawful." "Stop resisting." A knee pressed into his back. He could barely breathe. Somewhere behind him, Elijah's muffled sob broke the storm's rhythm. Marcus's vision swam. He tasted copper, rain, asphalt. He'd sentenced men for less brutality, now he was living it. "Please," he gasped. "My son," a shout cut him off. The world tilted as someone yanked him up, shoving him toward the cruiser. Elijah's face, pale behind the glass, and was the last thing he saw before the door slammed shut and darkness swallowed him whole. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too white, washing every face into something colorless. Marcus sat cuffed to a metal chair, soaked through, his wrists raw from the ride. The precinct smelled of old coffee, bleach, and arrogance. Across the table sat Officer Reed, smirking as he typed something into a computer. "Occupation?" he asked, eyes flicking up like it was a joke. Marcus stared at the wall clock instead. 2:17 a.m. "I already told you." Reed tapped the keys louder. "Right. Judge Marcus Hill. Cute." The older cop, Sergeant Holloway, leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "You know, lying to an officer's an offense," he said. "And impersonating a judge? That's a felony." Marcus's voice stayed low but steady. "So is unlawful detention." Holloway's jaw flexed. "You people always got something to say." Marcus looked at him, really looked. The man's face was creased from years of unchecked authority. His badge gleamed like a shield against consequence. He wanted to speak law, to teach, to break through ignorance, but another voice echoed louder in his head. "Elijah. Where's my son?" Marcus demanded. Reed didn't look up. "He's fine." "In the car. You left a child outside at 2 a.m? Reed shrugged. "Safer there than with you." Marcus's control cracked just slightly. His cuffs rattled as his hands jerked against them. "Bring him inside." Reed finally met his eyes, grin fading. "You don't get to make demands here." For a long moment the room held its breath. The hum of the lights, the faint drizzle outside, the echo of an unseen phone ringing somewhere down the hall, all pressed in on Marcus's chest. He swallowed hard. "You're making a grave mistake, yeah?" Reed said. "Then why don't you call your lawyer, Your Honor?" The sarcasm burned. Marcus leaned back, silent. Every instinct screamed to assert his authority. But every memory of the street reminded him what happened when black men raised their voices. Hours passed. The wet cuffs dug into his skin until he couldn't feel his fingers. Eventually, the door opened and a woman in uniform, a desk sergeant, entered with a clipboard. "ID check came back empty," she said to Holloway. "He's not in the system," Reed snorted. "Told you." Another one playing the victim. Marcus exhaled slowly. "Call the courthouse. You'll find my record there." The woman hesitated. She glanced at him. Saw the calm that wasn't fear, but something heavier, quieter. Doubt flickered in her eyes. "I'll verify," she said, slipping out. Reed leaned in. "You know what's funny? Every guy we pull over says he's somebody. A pastor, a senator, a war hero. You're the first judge, though. That's creative." Marcus stared through him. "When truth sounds like fiction, it says more about you than me." Reed scoffed. "Spare me the courtroom speech." Holloway pushed off the door. "Let him sit a while. Maybe humility'll do him good." The door shut behind them with a hollow clang. Marcus sat in the silence. The fluorescent buzz became a roar. His reflection shimmered faintly in the one-way mirror. His tie hung loose, his shoulders sagged, but his spine stayed straight. He whispered a prayer he hadn't said in years. "Protect my son. Keep him unseen. Keep me breathing." The door burst open again, not Reed, not Holloway. A younger officer, barely 25, cheeks flushed. "Sir, your kid's crying out there," he said quickly. "Says he's cold." Marcus stood, the chain yanked him back down. "Please, just let him sit inside." "He's 12. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not supposed to—" Marcus's voice cracked, finally human. "Please," a pause. Then the young cop nodded and slipped away. Minutes later, Elijah was ushered in. Small, trembling, wrapped in a blanket too big for him. His eyes widened at the sight of his father in cuffs. "Dad." Marcus forced a smile that broke his heart. "It's okay, son." "No, it's not," Elijah whispered, tears streaking his cheeks. "They said you were bad." Marcus's throat closed. He wanted to tell him the truth. That being good didn't always matter. That the system judged skin before character. But all he said was, "They're wrong." Reed returned, expression stiffening when he saw the boy inside. "Who let him?" The desk sergeant stepped in behind him, papers in hand, her voice flat. You might want to hear this, Reed. She set the page down. The room froze. Marcus Hill, she read aloud. Superior Court Judge, appointed 2016, confirmed. The silence that followed was the kind that breaks things. Reed's smirk vanished. Holloway's mouth twitched. Marcus didn't speak. He just watched the shift. The disbelief, the panic, the slow crawl of realization. Finally, Holloway cleared his throat. Could be a coincidence. The sergeant shot him a look.
Same photo.
Same ID number. Reed turned pale. This can't be right. Marcus's voice was almost gentle. You could have called 2 hours ago, Reed stammered. Look, Judge, don't, Marcus said quietly. Don't call me that now. Holloway tried to recover, laughing too loudly. All right, misunderstandings happen. Let's just uncuff him, the sergeant ordered. The metal clinked open. Marcus flexed his bruised wrists. Elijah ran to him, clinging tight. Holloway muttered, Let's keep this off the books, yeah? No need to stir up a mess. Marcus looked at him, eyes colder than rain. You already did. He walked out, son in his arms, leaving behind a silence thicker than guilt. Outside, the dawn was breaking, thin gray light spilling across puddles. For the first time all night, Marcus could breathe, but deep down he knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By sunrise, the precinct was a hive of whispers. Phones rang, doors slammed, papers shuffled faster than usual. A secret was crawling through the building, spreading like a stain no one could wash out. Judge Marcus Hill stood near the lobby desk, Elijah clutching his sleeve. His shirt was still damp, his wrists still raw. Every officer who passed averted their eyes, except one or two who lingered a beat too long, faces tight with disbelief or guilt. The chief of police, a broad man with thinning hair and a tie too short, strode in from a back office. His voice was clipped, forcedly polite. Judge Hill, I'm Chief Rollins. I'm told there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus met his gaze evenly. A misunderstanding that involved handcuffs, humiliation, and leaving my son in a car for 3 hours. Rollins's jaw flexed. Yes, well, I assure you we'll conduct an internal review. Protocol. Marcus cut in. Tell me, Chief, which protocol authorizes guns to be drawn on unarmed fathers driving home from a school event? The chief's smile faltered. Let's not make this adversarial. Then let's make it truthful. For a moment, only the hum of computers filled the space. Officers moved slower now, pretending not to listen, but every word hit the air like static. Rollins finally gestured toward his office. Why don't we speak privately? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. He told Elijah to wait on the lobby bench. The boy's eyes followed him until the door shut. Inside, the blinds were half drawn, dust swirling in morning light. Rollins gestured for Marcus to sit. Judge Hill, he began, using the title now like a fragile truce. I'll be honest. This situation puts us both in a difficult position. Marcus folded his hands. You're worried about headlines. Rollins exhaled. I'm worried about escalation. The media loves stories like this. If this leaks, it will leak, Marcus interrupted. Because truth tends to. Rollins's eyes narrowed slightly. We can resolve this internally, quietly. My officers were overzealous, not malicious. They'll be reprimanded. Reprimanded? Marcus repeated softly. I was forced to the ground in front of my son. One false move and I could have been another name on a hashtag. And you think a reprimand is justice? Rollins's calm cracked. Judge, with respect, your tone isn't helping. Marcus leaned forward. Neither is your denial. The chief looked away. His reflection in the office window was small, tired, human. But behind him, the system he served loomed too large to bend. Finally, he muttered, I'll have the officers transferred, temporarily. Marcus stood. Do that and prepare your statement. Because the press will ask why a superior court judge was treated like a suspect in his own city. Outside, as Marcus stepped back into the lobby, conversations died mid-sentence. The desk sergeant from earlier, the one who'd verified his ID, offered a faint, regretful nod. Your car's out back, sir. We had it towed here for safety, she said. Marcus nodded in thanks, but before he could move, a young officer hurried in from the parking lot. Chief, sir, you need to see this. Rollins emerged, irritated. What now? The officer held up a phone, screen glowing. Somebody posted body cam footage. It's online. A ripple of gasp spread through the station. Marcus froze. The officer hesitated before pressing play. The faint, grainy image filled the screen. Marcus on the ground, rain slick on his skin, Elijah crying in the background, Reed shouting commands. The room went utterly still. Rawlins's face drained of color. Who leaked this? No one answered. Marcus watched his own humiliation replay, frame by frame. The gun drawn, the shove, his son's scream. Seeing it from the outside was worse. Detached. Cold. It looked less like life and more like evidence. Elijah clung to his arm. "Dad, turn it off." Marcus lowered the phone gently. "It's okay, son." But it wasn't. It was only beginning. By afternoon, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Microphones thrust forward. Cameras flashed. "Judge Hill, is it true you were assaulted by police? Do you plan to press charges? Was this racially motivated?" Marcus said nothing, walking past them with the posture of a man holding in a storm. Inside, a few of his colleagues stopped him in the hall, some offering condolences, others offering distance disguised as sympathy. "Terrible thing," Marcus, one said quietly, "but you know how these stories get twisted." He kept walking. In his chambers, he finally sat, the silence pressing heavier than before. The gavel on his desk gleamed faintly in the afternoon sun, a symbol of power that suddenly felt hollow. He dialed a number. His wife, Danielle. Her voice came sharp and worried. "Marcus, I saw the footage. It's everywhere." "Elijah okay?" "He's shaken but safe. And you?" Marcus hesitated. "I'm angry, but controlled." Danielle's voice trembled. "You need to speak out. Don't let them bury this." He closed his eyes. "I know, but I need to move carefully. One wrong word and they'll turn me into the aggressor." She exhaled shakily. They already did. That evening, a press statement from the police department hit the news. The incident involving Judge Marcus Hill is under review. Preliminary findings suggest procedural miscommunication rather than racial motivation. Marcus stared at the screen, disbelief curdling into resolve. Reed and Holloway's faces appeared beside the text, blurred but recognizable. The department was already controlling the narrative. Elijah came to sit beside him, resting his head on Marcus's arm. "Dad," he whispered, "are they going to get in trouble?" Marcus looked down at him, voice quiet but certain. "They will answer for what they did. But first, the truth has to be louder than their lies." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, not calling for help this time, but echoing a city's unrest, and somewhere in that noise, Marcus made his decision. He wouldn't just defend himself. He'd expose the entire system that allowed it. By the next morning, the city was on fire, not with flames but with outrage. Screens glowed in every diner, every bus terminal, every phone held by shaking hands. The headline pulsed across networks. Body cam footage shows police detaining black judge and his son. Marcus watched it unfold from his living room couch. Elijah sat beside him, knees pulled to his chest, silent. The clip looped over and over. His body on the ground, his son crying, the officers shouting. The world had taken what was once private humiliation and turned it into spectacle. Danielle stood near the window, her phone vibrating nonstop. "Everyone's calling. Reporters, church leaders, advocacy groups. They want statements, interviews." Marcus didn't move. "And the department? They're calling it an unfortunate escalation." He gave a hollow laugh. "They're not sorry for what they did, just that people saw it." At the precinct, panic churned like smoke. Officer Reed sat hunched over his locker, scrolling through hate messages flooding his social media. His name was trending. His face, frozen mid-command, jaw clenched, had become a symbol of arrogance and fear. Sergeant Holloway barged in, voice low. "They're looking for the leak." Chief's losing his mind. "Says it came from inside." Reed looked up, eyes bloodshot. "You think they'll fire us?" "Not if we play it right," Holloway muttered. "The union's got our backs. Just stick to the stories." He got aggressive. "We followed protocol." "But the footage can be interpreted," Holloway snapped. "These people see what they want to see. We'll ride it out." Reed nodded, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. Across town, the courthouse felt different, colder. When Marcus entered through the marble doors, security officers straightened awkwardly. Clerks went silent as he passed. He heard whispers. "That's him." The judge from the video. He was both victim and curiosity now. In his chambers, stacks of mail covered his desk, letters from citizens, lawyers, strangers. Some offered solidarity, Others told him to stop making it about race. He skimmed one note. Dear Judge Hill, I'm sorry for what happened. My son's black too. I tell him every day how to survive traffic stops. We shouldn't have to teach them that. Marcus set it down, chest tightening. By noon, the mayor held a press conference. Cameras crowded City Hall. Chief Rollins stood beside her, face stiff, voice rehearsed. We take this incident seriously, he said. The department is cooperating fully with the review. We remind the public not to rush to judgment. Marcus watched on TV, jaw tightening at the phrase, not to rush to judgment. The irony scraped raw. The mayor added, we must remain united. Violence or threats against our officers help no one. Danielle muttered. They're already shifting blame. Marcus nodded. They always do. A reporter shouted from the crowd. Has Judge Hill spoken with you personally? The mayor hesitated. Not yet. Danielle turned to him. Then speak. Don't let them define your story. He hesitated and then stood. You're right. That evening, Marcus agreed to a live interview with a major news network. The studio lights were blinding, hotter than he expected. The anchor, polite but cautious, smiled thinly across the table. Judge Hill, thank you for being here. How are you and your family holding up? Marcus folded his hands. As well as anyone can when their dignity is broadcast as entertainment. The anchor nodded, voice soft. Do you believe this was racially motivated? He met the camera's gaze. Let's call things by their name. If I had been white, that stop would have ended with a warning, not a weapon. A pause. The anchor blinked, visibly uneasy. Some argue it was a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings don't come with guns drawn, Marcus said sharply. They come with questions, respect, humanity. The interview clip hit the internet before the show even ended. Within hours, hashtags trended worldwide. Justice for Judge Hill. Driving while black. Meanwhile, Chief Rollins convened an emergency meeting at headquarters. The room buzzed with tension. The situation's out of control, he barked. We're bleeding public trust. I want names and who leaked that footage. A young administrative officer shifted nervously. Sir, the file came from internal cloud storage. Could have been anyone. Then find them. Rollins slammed the table. And control the narrative before this destroys the department. Sergeant Holloway spoke up. Sir, maybe we issue a new statement. Emphasize confusion, weather, unclear communication. Spin it, Rollins said. Make it sound human but harmless. By nightfall, the smear campaign began. Anonymous posts flooded social media. Grainy photos of Marcus taken out of context. Old case rulings twisted into accusations of bias. A fabricated story circulated, claiming he'd been aggressive during the stop, that he'd provoked confrontation. Danielle scrolled through the comments, fury and hurt tightening her chest. They're lying about you. Marcus's face remained still, but his eyes were glassy. They have to. The truth threatens the order they've built. Elijah looked up from the couch. Dad, what's an angry black man? Marcus froze. The room fell silent. He crouched beside his son, voice trembling but calm. It's what people say when they don't want to face what made us angry. Elijah nodded slowly, confusion mixing with sadness. Marcus stood, pacing. They want this to fade. They want me quiet. He turned toward Danielle. I can't be. She took his hand. Then don't. Later that night, alone in his study, Marcus opened his laptop. He began drafting an open letter to the public. Justice cannot exist in shadows. What happened to me is not rare, it's routine. The only difference is a camera. But every unseen stop, every silenced voice deserves light. He stopped typing, staring at the blinking cursor. His reflection in the screen looked both weary and resolute. A notification popped up. An email from an unknown sender. Subject: You don't know me, but thank you. He opened it. I'm the one who leaked the video. I couldn't stand watching it buried. I'm sorry if it hurt you, but people needed to see. Marcus leaned back, heart pounding. The truth had an ally inside the machine, unseen, courageous. He typed back 2 words. You did right. The hearing room smelled of old wood and polished brass, a place where truth was supposed to echo. But today it felt suffocating, heavy with judgment disguised as procedure. Judge Elijah Carter sat at the long table, flanked by his attorney Monica Graves, a composed woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Across from them sat the police review board, a semicircle of officials pretending neutrality. Cameras clicked as journalists were ushered out after a few brief shots. "Judge Carter," began Chairman Dale Monroe, a man whose tone dripped with bureaucratic distance. "This inquiry aims to establish facts, not feelings." Monica folded her hands. "Facts are exactly what we intend to present." Elijah's jaw tightened. His mind replayed that night in flashes. The cold metal of the cuffs, the glint of disbelief in the officer's eyes when he revealed his name, the way silence had followed before chaos broke. "Officer Daniels claims you resisted arrest," Monroe continued, reading from a file. "He cites noncompliance." Monica's voice cut through like glass. "Resisting what? A stop based solely on skin color?" Judge Carter was unarmed, cooperative, and identified himself clearly. "That's not resistance, and that's survival." The room went still. From the corner, Officer Daniels sat stiff, uniform ironed too neatly, eyes flicking between the board and Elijah. His partner, Officer Kelly, avoided eye contact altogether. Monroe cleared his throat. The officers acted on suspicion consistent with a robbery report in the area. Elijah leaned forward, voice calm but razor-edged. "Suspicion? You mean a profile? A tall black man in a suit driving a luxury car. That was my crime." Daniel's jaw flexed. "We had cause to believe you had bias." Elijah interrupted softly, his tone measured, deadly calm. "And you humiliated a man in front of his son for it." A murmur rippled across the audience. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but someone was already live tweeting. Elijah could see a young intern typing fast in the back row. Monroe lifted a hand. "Judge Carter, please refrain from inflammatory language." "Injustice isn't inflammatory," Elijah replied. "It's the truth." Monica rested a hand on his arm, a subtle reminder to stay controlled. Daniels's attorney finally spoke, his voice rehearsed. "My client acted in good faith. The suspect fit a description. The stop escalated due to confusion and tension." Elijah turned toward Daniels, eyes piercing. "Do you feel confused every time you see a black man, officer?" Daniels said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Monica slid a document across the table. "We have traffic cam footage, time-stamped, high resolution. It shows Judge Carter's car stopping within seconds of the patrol lights. He didn't resist. He raised his hands. He complied fully. The supposed robbery suspect was apprehended 12 blocks away while a man who looks nothing like him." Monroe blinked. "This footage? When was it obtained?" 2 days ago," Monica replied smoothly. "From a private citizen who forwarded it to the press." Daniel's face drained of color. Kelly's head sank lower. Elijah exhaled slowly. For days he had felt powerless, reduced to a headline, a cautionary tale. Now for the first time the truth had a body. Monroe shuffled the papers nervously. "We'll need to verify the source and integrity of this video." "Do that," Monica said. "In the meantime, you might want to consider the integrity of the officers who swore an oath to protect and serve." The air thickened. Monroe cleared his throat again, signaling a recess. The board members rose, some whispering among themselves. Daniel shot Elijah a venomous look before exiting with his attorney. When the room cleared, Elijah sat back, shoulders trembling faintly from restrained emotion. Monica glanced at him. "You did well. You kept control." He gave a bitter laugh. "Control is the only thing they ever let us keep." She studied him for a long moment. "You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. This is bigger now. The footage, it's everywhere. People are watching." Elijah turned toward the tall windows where the late afternoon sun poured through like an interrogation light. Outside, reporters waited. Beyond them, protesters holding signs that read "Justice for Judge Carter" and "No one is above bias." For the first time, the story wasn't just his burden. It was a mirror, showing the world something it didn't want to see. He whispered almost to himself, "They'll come for me harder now." Monica nodded. "Then we'll make sure they can't touch you with lies again." A low hum began to rise outside. Chants, voices, the sound of movement building into momentum. Elijah closed his eyes for a moment, letting it wash over him. That sound, the people, it was no longer just noise. It was power. When he opened them again, his gaze was steady, resolute. "Then let's make sure," he said, "that the truth doesn't just survive, it wins." The morning after the inquiry, The world outside Elijah Carter's home felt louder. Sirens wailing in the distance, helicopters thumping above. The low hum of chaos that follows truth when it finally breaks containment. The footage had gone viral overnight. Every major network replayed it in slow motion. The stop, the cuffs, the disbelief when Elijah said the words, "I'm a judge." News anchors called it the arrest that shook the justice system. Social media called it what it was, racism laid bare. But inside his home, Elijah sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and exhaustion heavier than any robe he'd ever worn. His phone buzzed endlessly. Reporters, colleagues, old law school friends offering condolences that sounded more like fear. His teenage son, Malik, hovered by the doorway. "Dad, are you going to lose your job?" Elijah looked up slowly. "No, son. I'm going to make them answer for what they did." Malik nodded, but his voice wavered. "Some kids at school said you played the race card." The words hit harder than any headline. Elijah's throat tightened. "They'll always say that when we tell the truth," he said softly. "Because it's easier to deny than to see." Before Malik could reply, the doorbell rang. Monica Graves stood on the porch, phone in hand, eyes stormy. "They've turned the narrative," she said the moment Elijah opened the door. Local police union released a statement claiming you provoked the officers, that you leveraged your position to intimidate law enforcement. They're painting you as the aggressor. Elijah exhaled, steady but tired. Of course they are. She followed him into the living room, TV flickering with breaking news banners. A commentator was speaking. While the incident appears racially charged, Judge Carter's conduct during the stop remains under question. Monica muted the screen. They're pushing back hard. They've leaked parts of your old rulings, cases where you ruled against officers. They're building a bias narrative. Elijah sank into his chair. "So now I'm the racist judge," she nodded grimly. "They're scared. That means you're winning." Outside, a small crowd had gathered beyond the police barricades, supporters chanting his name, holding signs demanding justice. But mixed in were hecklers shouting slurs and waving thin blue line flags. Malik peered through the blinds. "They're out there yelling. About you." Elijah's voice stayed calm. "Let them. The louder they yell, the more truth we've hit." Just then, his phone buzzed again. This time, a call from the Chief Justice's office. Monica gave him a look, wary, braced. He answered. "This is Judge Carter." A pause. Then the voice of Chief Justice Warren, clipped formal. "Elijah, we're convening an emergency panel to review your conduct. Effective immediately, you're placed on administrative leave until the matter concludes." Elijah closed his eyes. "You've seen the footage. You know I did nothing wrong." "This isn't about guilt," Warren said. "It's about optics. The court must appear impartial." "Appear," Elijah repeated bitterly. "Not be. I'm sorry, Elijah. My hands are tied. The line went dead." Monica swore under her breath. "They're sacrificing you to keep the peace." He placed the phone down slowly, the weight of it grounding him. "Peace built on silence isn't peace," he murmured. Moments later, Malik came running in. "Dad, look!" He pointed to the TV. A live broadcast showed Officer Daniels at a press conference, clean-shaven and defiant. "We regret the misunderstanding," he said, "but threats against me and my family are unacceptable. I acted according to my training and in defense of community safety." Reporters shouted questions. One woman asked, "Do you believe Judge Carter's race influenced your judgment that night?" Daniels hesitated, just for a second, then forced a smile. "I don't see color. I see behavior," Monica scoffed. "There it is. The script." Elijah's hands curled into fists. "He still won't admit it." "No," Monica said. "But the world just watched that pause. That's what they'll remember." The afternoon stretched long and heavy. Supporters rallied downtown. Legal experts debated ethics on national TV. Elijah's inbox flooded with both threats and letters of admiration. By evening, protesters had filled the courthouse steps, chanting his name. The police formed barricades. Tension buzzed like static in the air. Elijah stood at his window, watching the skyline glow red under flashing lights. "They'll try to bury this," he said quietly. Monica joined him. "Then we dig it back up. Tomorrow we file a civil rights lawsuit. This isn't just about you, it's about precedent." He turned toward her, eyes weary but burning with resolve. "Then tomorrow we stop asking for justice," he said. We demand it. Outside, a chant rose louder. No more silence, no more fear. Malik stepped beside his father, slipping his small hand into his. Dad, he whispered. They're fighting for you. Elijah looked down at his son. The reason he had endured the humiliation, the hearings, the headlines. No, he said softly. They're fighting for us. As the night deepened, the crowd grew, the police line thickened, and somewhere amid the shouts and flashing lights, Elijah Carter realized the truth. This wasn't backlash anymore. It was awakening, and awakenings once begun cannot be silenced. The city was on edge. By morning, downtown looked like a battlefield waiting for its first spark. Rows of officers in riot gear, protesters holding signs, drones circling above like vultures. On every screen, the words "Judge Carter case erupts" scrolled in red. Commentators argued, pundits shouted, and the country split clean down its old scar line. Those who saw injustice, and those who refused to. Inside his modest home, Elijah Carter sat at his desk, eyes locked on the television as footage rolled, his own face grainy and slowed down, becoming a symbol he never asked to be. Monica Graves stood behind him, reading off her tablet. The Department of Justice just announced an independent review. But local authorities? They're stonewalling. No charges, no suspension. The police union's doubling down. Elijah's voice was low, almost distant. They want to wear me out. Make me the example of why it's better to stay quiet. Malik appeared in the doorway holding his backpack. Dad, they canceled school. Said it wasn't safe. Elijah turned. The boy's eyes were frightened, not for himself, but for his father. He crossed the room, knelt and gripped Malik's shoulders. No matter what happens, you remember this. You never apologize for demanding respect. Malik nodded, but his small voice trembled. But they hate you now. Elijah swallowed hard. Some people hate the mirror because it shows them who they are. Monica's phone buzzed again. Messages from reporters, law clerks, even anonymous threats. It's getting worse, she said. They've leaked your address, Elijah. We need to move you somewhere secure. But he shook his head. I'm not hiding in my own city. She stared at him. This isn't pride, it's survival. He met her gaze. If I run, they win. Outside, the chants were growing, hundreds, maybe thousands now. Their voices echoed off courthouse walls. Justice for Carter. End police immunity. A single sound, the crack of something breaking, almost split the air. A trash can was hurled. The police line advanced. Chaos spilled like ink across the streets. Elijah grabbed his coat. Monica's eyes widened. Where are you going? He didn't answer, just looked out the window at the flashing lights. They're using my name, he said softly. I can't let it become another tragedy headline. She followed him out the door. Elijah! The streets roared with the rhythm of boots, chants, and tear gas canisters clattering on asphalt. Protesters coughed, covering their faces with scarves. Officers shouted orders. Elijah moved through the chaos like a ghost. No robe, no gavel, just a man trying to reach his people. Someone noticed him. That's him. That's Judge Carter. Phones lifted. Cameras flashed. The crowd surged around him. He climbed the courthouse steps, in the same ones he'd walked 1,000 times as a symbol of law. But this time he was a witness to what the law had become. Judge Carter, a young protester yelled, voice hoarse, say something. He raised his hands the same way he had the night of the stop, open, unarmed, pleading. The irony wasn't lost on him. The chanting slowed, then stopped. Silence rippled through the crowd. Elijah's voice carried through the bullhorn handed to him. Steady, deep, broken and powerful all at once. They wanted me quiet. They wanted this to be about one man and one night. But look at us, this isn't one story. It's every story they buried, the crowd roared. They said I disrespected the badge. But what disrespects it more? My words or their silence when injustice walks free in uniform? Tears ran down Monica's cheeks. Malik, standing beside her, watched his father not as a victim, but as a force. Police advanced again, shields raised. Someone threw another bottle. A flashbang burst. Smoke spread. Elijah coughed but didn't move. Stay calm, he shouted, voice strained. Don't let them turn this into fear. Then through the haze, Officer Daniels appeared. The same officer who'd arrested him. Helmet off, face pale. He looked older now, weighed down by what he'd set in motion. Their eyes met across the smoke. For a moment, Time froze. The judge and the officer, mirror images of a system cracking apart. Daniels lowered his shield. "Judge Carter, go home," he said quietly, almost pleading. Elijah's gaze didn't waver. "You first," a camera caught the exchange. The image, two men standing in smoke, neither backing down, flashed across every network that night. When the crowd finally dispersed and the police pulled back, Elijah stood on those courthouse steps, coughing, shaking, but unbroken. Monica approached him, eyes red. "You just made history," she whispered. He looked out over the emptying streets littered with signs and smoke. "History's written in blood and courage," he said softly. "We've already given enough blood. It's time for courage." In the distance, sirens wailed again, the same sound that had begun it all. Only now Elijah didn't flinch. He turned to Monica and Malik. "Tomorrow we file the case. No more hearings. No more waiting. They wanted to break me." He looked back at the courthouse, glowing in the blue light of the police cruisers. "But this time," he said, voice like iron, "I'm breaking them with the law they taught me to fear." 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. The marble pillars gleamed under the overhead lights, and the air felt electric. Part anticipation, part vengeance, part history in motion. Every seat was filled, reporters, activists, law students, citizens who had once whispered that justice was blind, but now came to see if it could finally see. At the plaintiff's table sat Judge Elijah Carter, not in robes but in a dark suit. His expression was calm, controlled, yet there was a quiet fire behind his eyes. The kind of fire that only comes from being forged in humiliation. Beside him, Monica Graves organized folders and evidence files, her every movement sharp and deliberate. Across the aisle, Officer Daniels sat rigid, his attorney whispering strategy. Behind them, uniformed officers filled the benches like a wall of blue. When the judge entered, not Elijah but Judge Roberts, a respected federal jurist, the room rose. Cameras clicked like gunfire before the bailiff barked for silence. Court is now in session for Carter versus Daniels et al., a civil rights suit alleging unlawful arrest, racial profiling, and abuse of authority. Every head turned toward Elijah. Monica began the opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about more than one man's humiliation. It's about a system that punishes dignity when it comes in black skin." She paced slowly. On that night, Judge Elijah Carter, a man sworn to uphold the Constitution, was treated as a suspect not because of what he did, but because of what he looked like. And when he spoke his truth, the system moved not to correct itself, but to silence him. The defense attorney rose, smooth and confident. "This case isn't about race, and it's about procedure. Officer Daniels acted within protocol during a tense, confusing situation. My client regrets the misunderstanding, but regrets are not evidence of misconduct." The courtroom murmured. Then came the evidence. Traffic cam footage played on the screen. Clear, irrefutable. The moment of the stop, Elijah's calm compliance, the flash of handcuffs under the streetlight. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Monica's voice broke that silence. You can see Judge Carter raising his hand, cooperating, speaking calmly. You can hear Officer Daniels accusing him of reaching, shouting over his words. Daniels' attorney objected, but the judge overruled. Monica turned toward the jury. "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's muscle memory, learned fear, learned power, the kind that kills truth before it ever reaches a courtroom." Daniels' cross-examination came next. He stood, shifting uncomfortably under the weight of the crowd's eyes. "Officer Daniels," Monica began, "when did you realize who you had arrested?" He swallowed, after he identified himself. "And your reaction?" I was surprised." "Surprised," she repeated. "Because?" He hesitated. "Because I didn't expect..." "Didn't expect what? That a black man driving a Mercedes could be a judge?" Objection. Sustained. But the damage was done. The silence afterward said everything. When Elijah took the stand, the courtroom leaned forward. He sat tall, gaze steady. "I've spent 20 years believing the law was a shield," he said. "But that night it became a weapon, not because the law failed, but because the people enforcing it did." Monica asked softly, "What do you want from this court?" Elijah's answer was quiet, so quiet the microphones barely caught it. "Accountability, not revenge. I want to prove that justice isn't just a word carved in marble. It's a promise that must survive even when men like me are stripped of our titles. When he stepped down, people in the gallery were wiping tears. Even Judge Roberts' gavel came down slower than usual. The defense argued that Daniels had been unfairly vilified by media, that public pressure had turned this into a trial by outrage. They painted him as a man following orders, caught in an impossible situation. But then Monica called Officer Kelly. Daniel's partner, he looked nervous, eyes darting. "Officer Kelly," Monica said. "You were there that night. Did Judge Carter resist?" "No," he admitted softly. "Did you feel threatened by him?" A pause. "No, ma'am." "So why did you cuff him?" He swallowed. "Because Daniels told me to." "Why didn't you stop him?" Kelly's hands trembled. "Because he outranked me. And because—" He hesitated, then sighed. "Because it's easier to do what you're told than question it." The courtroom exhaled as one. By the time closing arguments came, tension hung so thick it felt physical. Monica faced the jury. "We teach our children that justice is blind. But blindness isn't justice when it refuses to see. Look at what you've seen here. Not just in this courtroom, but in the streets, in the footage, in the silence that followed. It's time to make the system see again." When the jury retired, the world held its breath. Hours passed. Reporters waited outside. The chants resumed. Elijah sat motionless, hands clasped, every muscle in his body coiled tight. Finally, the bailiff called, "All rise." The jury filed in. "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreman nodded. "We have." He unfolded the paper slowly. "In the case of Carter versus Daniels et al., we find the defendants liable on all counts." Gasps. Applause. A sob somewhere in the back row. Elijah's shoulders dropped. Not in victory, but in release. A quiet surrender to truth. Judge Roberts banged his gavel. "Order." This court finds the actions of the defendants unlawful, racially motivated, and in violation of civil rights statutes. Damages will be determined in a separate hearing. Daniels slumped in his seat, eyes hollow. Kelly looked down, ashamed. Monica leaned toward Elijah, voice trembling. "You did it," he shook his head gently. "We did." Outside, the crowd erupted. But inside, Elijah stayed seated a moment longer, looking up at the carved words above the bench. Equal justice under law. For the first time, they didn't feel like a lie. The verdict had landed like a thunderclap. For days, the city buzzed with the electricity of change. Protests turned into vigils. Anger became organization. And for the first time in years, people believed the word justice might mean something again. But victory, Elijah Carter learned, was never clean. He sat in his chambers, reinstated, but stripped of comfort. Boxes filled with letters covered his desk. Congratulations from strangers, thank yous from parents, pleas from victims who now believed their voices mattered. Between them, a single envelope marked internal memorandum, confidential. He opened it, effective immediately. Due to heightened security concerns and threats received, you are advised to refrain from public court appearances. Relocation assistance is available. It wasn't a warning. It was exile disguised as concern. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, exhaustion pooling in his chest. For every door the verdict opened, another had quietly closed. The phone buzzed. Monica Graves's voice came through, brisk but warm. "Press wants a statement. CNN's waiting, BBC wants a live interview. You're trending again, #Justice for Carter." Elijah smiled faintly. "Hashtags fade faster than courage." "Maybe," she said. But this one lit something real. Before he could reply, another call beeped through. The Chief Justice, Warren. Elijah switched over. "Elijah," Warren said, his tone careful. "The court respects your resilience, but some members feel your public visibility could politicize the bench." Elijah's voice sharpened. "You mean they want me quiet again?" "You've become a symbol," Warren replied. "Symbols attract danger." "Then maybe," Elijah said. "The danger isn't me, it's what I revealed." There was a long pause. Then the line went dead. Later that afternoon, Elijah walked outside the courthouse, the autumn wind cold but clean. Across the plaza, a mural was being painted, his face not in full but half-shadowed, half-light, surrounded by words. "Truth on trial." Malik stood watching, backpack slung over one shoulder. "They say you're a hero now," he said quietly. Elijah smiled, kneeling beside him. Heroes don't lose as much as I have. But you won, Malik said. He looked out at the mural, the crowd, the police officers standing uneasily nearby. Winning and healing aren't the same thing. A group of journalists spotted him and rushed over. Judge Carter, what message do you have for the country? One called out. Elijah turned toward them, the weight of weeks pressing behind his calm. The system isn't broken, he said. It was built this way, and we can't fix it by pretending it works. Only by admitting where it fails again and again until the truth no longer needs defending. Flashbulbs went off. The words spread across screens within minutes. Monica joined him afterward, slipping a small folder into his hand. Federal inquiry just announced. They're investigating the entire department. Daniel's supervisors, the police chief, even the training manuals. It's bigger than you now. He opened the folder, eyes scanning the pages. They'll fight it. Of course, she said. But this time they're on record. They stood in silence as the sun dipped behind the courthouse. The city glowed gold as if trying to wash itself clean. A sudden noise, a shouting from across the street. A counter-protester had torn one of the mural banners. Officers rushed in, separating the two sides. For a tense moment, it seemed violence might erupt again. Elijah's instinct screamed to step forward, to mediate, to calm. But Monica held his arm. Not this time, she whispered. Let the truth speak for itself. And it did. One of the young protesters, a girl no older than Malik, climbed onto the steps and shouted, "You can't erase what we saw." Her voice carried through the plaza. The tension broke like glass under sunlight. People began to clap. Then cheer. Then chant his name, not in worship but in solidarity. Elijah watched, tears pricking his eyes. This was what justice looked like, imperfect. Loud, alive. That night at home he found Malik asleep on the couch. TV still playing the news recap. The anchor's voice echoed softly. Judge Elijah Carter's landmark case is already reshaping training policies nationwide. Officer Daniels faces federal review and potential decertification. Experts are calling it a turning point in race and justice. Elijah muted the TV and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered like restless stars. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to breathe. He knew tomorrow would bring more battles, smear pieces, appeals, politics dressed as reform. But tonight there was stillness. Malik stirred and mumbled, half asleep. "You did it, Dad." Elijah whispered back, "No, son. We started it." He walked to the window and stared at his reflection. Tired, older but unbroken. The mirror no longer showed the man in handcuffs. It showed a man who had refused to kneel, and somewhere deep inside he knew this wasn't the end. It was the reckoning before the rebuilding. He whispered into the quiet room. Justice isn't a verdict. It's a fight that never ends. Outside in the cool night, the mural lights flickered, his face half in shadow, half in dawn, a beginning disguised as closure. 10 years later, the courthouse looked different. The marble was still cold, the walls still echoed with arguments and verdicts. But the portraits on the second floor told a new story. Among them, framed in deep oak and quiet dignity, hung the photo of Judge Elijah Carter. The plaque beneath read, "For service beyond justice, for courage and truth." Malik stood before it, straightening his tie. His reflection merged with his father's in the glass, 2 generations looking back at each other. Outside, crowds gathered for the Carter Judicial Reform Symposium, an annual event now attended by judges, civil rights attorneys, and activists nationwide. "Your father would have been proud," said Monica Graves. Older now, but still sharp-eyed, her hair streaked silver. Malik smiled faintly. "He didn't fight for pride. He fought so he wouldn't have to." Monica handed him a folder. "The keynote's in 15 minutes. You sure you're ready?" He took the folder but didn't open it. He used to say justice isn't a speech. It's what you do after the applause fades. Monica's eyes softened. "You sound just like him." Malik chuckled quietly. "Guess that's my curse or my gift." He walked onto the courthouse steps where cameras and microphones waited. Flashbulbs flickered, echoing a memory. That night years ago when his father stood on these same steps, trembling from exhaustion but still defiant. Now Malik stood taller. He carried not the weight of survival but of continuation. The crowd hushed as he began. 10 years ago, my father was handcuffed on this street, not because he broke the law, but because he embodied it, because his skin color made some men see threat where there was integrity. A murmur rippled through the audience. He continued. They tried to silence him, but his silence spoke louder than their authority. And when the truth came out, it didn't just free him, it revealed all of us. The system he challenged still exists, but so does the courage he left behind. He paused, scanning the crowd. Faces of young law students, police cadets, community leaders. Legacy isn't what we inherit. It's what we refuse to repeat. Applause rose like a wave. Afterward, Malik stepped aside, letting the press swarm Monica. He slipped into the quiet corridor of the courthouse, his father's old hallway. The same smell of varnish and paper, the same humming fluorescent lights. He entered Chambers 204, Judge Elijah Carter, now preserved as a historical office. Stacks of old case files remained where his father had left them. On the desk sat a wooden gavel, engraved with the words, "Truth above power." Malik ran his fingers over it, feeling the grooves. A low voice startled him. "You know," said an elderly janitor sweeping nearby, "your daddy never let nobody touch that gavel but him." Malik smiled softly. "I remember. Said it wasn't a weapon, it was a promise." The janitor nodded. "Still is, son. Still is." That evening, Malik walked through the city his father once fought to change. The mural still stood, now weathered. The colors fading, but the message untouched. Truth on trial. Someone had added new graffiti beneath it. Still fighting. He stopped at the spot where the police had first pulled Elijah over. A small bronze plaque marked it now. Here began the case that awakened a nation. Cars drove by unaware, everyday life flowing past history. Malik closed his eyes, hearing echoes of his father's voice. Calm, steady, unyielding. Justice isn't a verdict. It's a fight that never ends. He smiled through the ache. Later that night, he returned home to his apartment, where news coverage of the symposium played on TV. His speech was already trending online. The anchor's words carried pride instead of outrage this time. Today marks 10 years since the Carter case reshaped judicial accountability across the country. The Carter Act, requiring bias training and independent oversight for law enforcement, remains a landmark reform. Malik muted the TV and glanced at a framed photo on the wall. His father in his robes, one hand resting on Malik's shoulder the day he graduated law school. The silence felt sacred. He opened his laptop and began typing, a book manuscript titled, "The Weight of Fairness." On the dedication page, he wrote, "For my father, who taught me that truth doesn't need permission." Outside, thunder rolled softly, a storm beginning somewhere beyond the skyline. Rain streaked the windowpane, blurring the city lights. Malik stood, watching lightning flash across the courthouse dome in the distance. He could almost imagine his father's silhouette there, watching too. And for the first time, Malik didn't feel the need to fight alone. He whispered into the quiet, "You didn't just survive it, Dad. You changed it." The storm deepened, but instead of fear, there was calm, a reminder that every storm, no matter how dark, leaves the air cleaner. As rain washed over the streets where injustice once reigned, the legacy of one man, one moment of defiance, lived on in every drop. Final line. The gavel fell once more, not to silence, but to echo.